Hey, what's going on,
Hey, how
man?
you doing, man?
You look
How you
good.
doing?
Lost some weight, huh?
Yes, I did. In 2020, I lost about 90 pounds. So
Well, your
yeah,
socks are
I,
now, and now you have to get all sexy.
no, it's just, I was 55 and that's like, all right, I had a kidney stone actually and went to the doctor and, they did my blood work and stuff. And it wasn't a secret I was fat, but they said, man, your triglycerides are off the chart. So they want to put me on a medication. I'm like, you know what? It's about time I just take this seriously. Let me just get this under control. So I just basically got it under control, for myself. Just dialed it in, started exercising, doing basically intermittent fasting, and dropped 90 pounds in about the past 9 months.
Damn. I mean, my eyes just like, oh shit, that's not who I remember from the, from the doc.
Believe me, I know, man. I look at it, I look at the doc, and I'm like, oof, I was, I was thick, I was big.
But it's a good thing that it happened the way it did, because it's an underdog story for all us dads. You know what I mean? All those
Absolutely.
dreamers,
Yep.
and I saw myself in you. I was like, oh shit, man.
Dude, I know. That's what, after we had lived it, and we kind of knew, and the story was going to be put together from the footage. I was like, man, this is something that I really hope when people see it that they can relate to it, because this is, it was totally unexpected. This was 30 years ago. And if it can happen to me and to all of us, in the band, you never know. When a dream sneaks up on you, it's every bit as sweet.
Yeah. I mean, maybe even more so, you know what I mean?
Oh
Because
yeah, yeah, because
like when
I
you
wouldn't never imagined I'd be doing this.
I know, huh? Like if like when you give up, it's like finding, $20 in a pants pocket. When you feel like,
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, to a little more bigger extent, but when you feel something that you love so much die, like that's one of my questions. Did you have any anger or hold on. Did you have any anger, like seeing your dream die for those 30 years? Did you hold anything inside?
No, no, there was, as was alluded to in the movie, there were some issues back in the day,
Right.
which we know immediately after I had left, which was just not knowing that we had actually got got a contract. And then, coming to find out that all the songs that myself and or the guitarist had written were on that album, and we didn't even get thanked, on the album. Yeah, that at that point, 1986, I was mad.
And
And,
I
go ahead.
didn't quite understand that part. I rewatched it a few times, just that part.
Uh-huh.
So Doc is working out a deal, and he
Right,
said in the
Doug. Mhm.
documentary that he wasn't doing anything malicious. It was just, especially back then, it's not like right now where you email or text somebody and you're in contact. I'm sure that it's over time. He was no longer a part of that band. Then you guys, the incarnation of This Is Siren, that that Siren band hit pretty big. And then after that it hit, after you got in 86 is when the deal took place. I'm just trying to, I'm trying
Sure.
to
No,
figure it out.
sure. And here's the nutshell version. So the band was initially founded in 81, and that was by myself and a few other guys, Rob Phillips, Hal Dunn, one of the guitarists in the band now. And eventually Doug joined in 82. And we had done a series of demos, starting with a single and then two more demos. And there were some lineup changes along the way. So by 85, we were at the part we're doing our third demo called Dead of Night. And that's the demo that ultimately got the band signed. So myself and our guitarist, Faxon Kotz, were had hit a point basically in the band where, like, you know what, this is the best we've put out, but we're not getting any traction. And there had been some headbutting with Doug and Faxon, and I had already talked him back into the band at one time, because they were just not getting along. And he was like, dude, I'm going to leave. I can't take it anymore. And I was like, oh, come on. And I tried, but I wasn't able to talk him back in. And I was like, you know what? We don't have anything on the plate. There's nothing on the horizon. You know, I'm just going to go focus on college and, you know, move on. But what we didn't know was that Doug, the singer, had been working out a deal for, you know, for an album, but we weren't aware of that. We weren't aware that we had actually reached the goal at that time. So we left, but within, you know, a few weeks, without telling us that and saying, hey, we did it. We got this deal, you know, don't go. He was like, okay, I'm going to go over here and ask these guys who used to be in the band long ago if they want to go do this album. So that incarnation of the band went over to Germany, did that first album, recording the songs that largely Faxon and I had written. So that's when we found out about that, and it got back, and I was like, wow, okay, well, we didn't know this was going on. We would have stayed in the band had we known we had reached the finish line. And then when I saw it, and my name wasn't in the thanks, it wasn't in the credits, even though there's all the songs that I'd written, you know, everything. I was like, okay, that's harsh. You know, that was rough. So at that point, yeah, definitely some hard feelings. But, you know, when you get back to your original question, I'm not the kind of guy who really holds on to that stuff. So within, you know, within months after that, I'm like, okay, it is what it is. That, you know, what's done is done. I was already just had moved on, had, you know, was going to school, living life. And it went on from there. So Doug kept the band going in different incarnations from that point, released another album in 89, I think it was 88 or 89, Financial Suicide. And then the band pretty much ended at that point until things started, you know, with where you see the documentary pick up what happened in 2015.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah. And by that point, there was no hard feelings. You know, like I said, I had set that aside years ago. So when we finally reconnected, it was like, hey, man, how often, who gets this chance? Let's go for it.
That's amazing. Did you have to relearn the drums? Because I can imagine, like, is it just like riding a bike?
It's pretty much like riding a bike. I didn't. I've always loved music, and I did still keep playing, but not in any bands. I just played with, you know, like to do recording myself. And so I would just do stuff with my home studio, and not put anything out, you know, until about 2014, 2015 with my now wife, you know, back then just a friend, of the album of kind of like Trans-Siberian Orchestra, like orchestral rock type stuff, because she plays keys. And I picked up guitar along the way. Like I said, nothing in a band, nothing fun, but I have always dabbled in music since then. But with it, I tell you, it was a whole different thing jumping back into Siren and having to pick up those songs again. And, you know, as you see, I was still pretty heavy back when, you know, when this started. So diving into some of those old tunes, I was like, ooh, I need to work up my conditioning. So that part, it was the playing was like riding a bicycle, but you know, it was a fat guy riding a bicycle. So yeah.
So what do you do in that to end up helping your endurance for drums? Do you just go walk? Do you go lift weights? Like, what is it that you do to really help your
actually body? What I did was actually I just played and played and played because I wanted to make sure that these songs were so just embedded in me again, like they used to be back in the day when we would rehearse 3 or 4 or 5 days a week, that it was just in there. So it's kind of like, you know, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. It was getting that repetition in, that muscle memory in, and working up my endurance. So that was, you know, that was largely what it was, just the repetition of doing it. And also it gave me the chance to mentally prepare, because this, like I said, this is something none of us have done. Mm-hmm. So as I would sit here, you know, at my electronic kit behind me and practice and go over these songs and over these songs, I would mentally picture, okay, what's this going to look like to see thousands of people sitting in front of me, to kind of take that edge off so that when it actually happens, I just didn't black out like, when do a public speaking sometime and you go into this, third person kind of thing and you lose track of, the moment. I was like, you know what? I want to picture that so that I know when this happens, I can also tell myself, this is real. Enjoy this moment because this is exactly what you were living for back in the day. This is what you wanted to see and you're going to see it. So don't let that moment go by. Be there and tell yourself, remind yourself while it's happening that it's happening. And I did while I was playing and seeing thousands of people singing words back to me that I had written like in high school social studies class. I was like, this is going on. You're seeing this now. There are people just into it and singing this back to you. So it's like, 18-year-old me, it's happening. It may only be happening for this hour, but it's happening. And it was really cool.
I want to say that the cinematography for this movie is it makes you, and not all of documentaries bring you into that where like you feel you're there and you get lost. I'm a music guy. I don't play any music. I just talk shit. But I know I put shows on. I'm a promoter. I mean, I every single bar in Ventura County, I've thrown shows. Ventura Theater, I've thrown a show. All down LA, and I can literally smell the stink inside of like a bar, and I can smell the spilt liquor everywhere. Just the shots is very. It's transformation of your brain, and especially I haven't at all been in a bar since the COVID. I mean, I'm in California. It's the most, and I was there and I felt it. How much, like, who was in charge of breaking it down, and were you surprised how well it was put together?
Absolutely. I was surprised, and yet I wasn't surprised. Okay, so the person you're talking about, the person who is responsible for that amazing cinematography, is a young man named Nathan Mowry, and he's a guy out of Georgia who Chris Jericho had met through Diamond Dallas Page because Nathan was working for Diamond Dallas Page, and so Chris enlisted Nathan to do the Judas video by Fozzy, and did an amazing, incredible job with it. So when this happened with the path we were going down with Siren, and I told Chris, I said, dude, you're not going to believe this, because we've been friends for 20 years. I said, this is what's going on. And he was literally, he was like, come on, man. No, you can't be serious. I know you had a band back in the day, but we all did. And I said, it's happening. And he says to me, literally, I don't mean to be rude, but is anyone going to care? And I said, that's exactly what I said to the promoter. Is anyone going to care? Is anyone going to know us? And they said, yes. So after that conversation, the next day, Chris had called me and said, listen, man, I can't get this conversation out of my mind. What would you think if I paid to have a crew go with you over to Germany, and we'll do a documentary film about this? Because we were still preparing. This was still 6 months out. And I said, man, sure, we're going to live it anyway. So it'd be great to have it captured, because in the worst case scenario, we've got a great home movie. And the best case scenario, there'll be a cool movie, that other people can watch. So he engaged Nathan. So he financed Nathan, and at different times, Nathan had different assistants, like to come down and do the interviews and some of the things you saw as we were preparing. He came down from Georgia, and then Nathan went with us to, and one of his colleagues went with us to Germany. And an interesting thing about about that. Nathan, he's a young guy, young to us. He was, I think, 26 or 27 at the time, but he had never traveled internationally, and nor had the majority of the band. So, I was in, I don't know if you could tell, but I was in like full dad mode because, I was a single dad for several years, raising my daughters. And so I was literally trying to herd everybody through this experience. It's like, okay, we're at the airport. Where's this? Where's this? Did you check this in? And having Nathan and, his partner along with us was like having, my newbies and then also a couple younger, like the kids, the teenagers, who are with us. But Nathan did such an incredible job at capturing. He has such an eye. He was constantly, as this experience was unfolding, literally, I would see him like this. And I knew exactly what he was doing. He was compiling in his mind what he had shot, that day, and how is it going to cut together, and making notes to try to tell the story that we were living through at the time. So he wasn't just pointing a camera and capturing this. He was capturing it, and then at the same time trying to begin to put together how this story will flow. Because, and I don't mean to keep rambling here, but as Chris said in the movie, it is very true that it's going to go one of two ways. Either the wheels are going to come off and it'll be a total shit show and it'll still be an interesting story, or it'll be great and it'll be triumphant and it'll be a great story. Thankfully, it was the latter. But the ability to capture that is something that blew my mind, because I know that throughout this whole experience there was a couple hundred hours of footage that they had captured. I mean, because you got to capture everything to stumble upon those moments of something interesting. It's like taking band pictures. You got to take 200 pictures to get two that everyone agrees on. And it's very much the same way. You got to capture everything and then really whittle it down. And that's what Nathan, and then once it was mold, you started to shape that clay, that's when Jericho came in from his years of experience as an entertainer and crafting stories, in the ring and other places, where he's like, all right, what is this story telling? What are we communicating this story well? And they did an incredible job. So between Nathan's eye for cinematography and putting it together, and the two of their ability to convey the story, it blew us away when we first saw it. It was like, wow, this is really good.
I've attempted to put together a documentary, and I'm actually in the middle of it, of doing my own.
Oh, cool.
And it's very hard to live in the moment and work at the same time. So when you're seeing this, like, that's him not living in the moment. And it's so hard to have that balance of living in the moment and keeping together, right? It's because you want to be in the moment to be able to express
you want to experience
feelings through the documentary, but also you need to understand, like, oh shit, I need this shot. Where's my B-roll? Should I interview this dude? It's very difficult.
That's very true.
One of the things,
and having that colleague with him helped as well, because he could then say, okay, I'm going to be over here getting in the dressing room with the guys. I need you to go shoot some shots of the crowd, or see if you can find Greg, that kind of thing.
And one of the reasons what made me fall in love with you as a character in a movie or in a documentary is the fact that you were dad, and knowing, like, you are me, right? Having a dream.
Cool.
Fuck it, I gotta go on and raise my family. I had to leave the military.
Right.
I was in the military for 12 years. That was my career. And I left because I can't go to Iraq for 12 months of the year. I just can't and really be a good dad.
Right.
So I ended up leaving.
It's a small window.
Yeah. So then I left and I became a single dad, like you. I started doing music and the magazine, like you. So everything that I'm seeing in this, I'm like, fuck, dude, this is me. I'm loving this guy. And you root for people that are like you. So it's, there's a lot of people like us in the world that, maybe this is good for them to see.
And that's what I was hoping, especially after we saw it. I was like, man, I hope that this resonates with people, that it's so exciting when that dream sneaks up on you, because it's like it's magic.
Oh yeah, yeah. I have two more questions. How does
Okay.
yours and Jericho's relationship intersect? Is it through music or
No, it's
just
actually, it was
Florida?
the initial meeting was at church, believe it or
Okay.
not. Yeah, this was back in 1999, so previous century. Uh, I had been going to this church for quite a while, and then he started going to the same church here in the Tampa area, because his girlfriend at the time and her family had been going to that church, so he went with them a couple times. And I saw him. He's easy to spot, walking
Yeah.
through, especially back then. He was very big, and the long hair. And I knew who he was because I was a fan of wrestling, especially when I was a kid. But I also knew that he was a big heavy metal fan, and that he really liked a lot of the European metal bands that I liked, like Halloween, and more obscure stuff, as well as the bigger bands. So I went up to him one day and said, hey man, listen, just want to say hi. Um, you know, I think we're both fans of some of the same bands, like so and so and so and so. And I think that kind of caught him. It wasn't just a fan coming up, saying, wow, man, you're going to beat The Rock.
Mhm.
It wasn't like that. It was someone who came up to him on a completely different level, that it was just a guy coming up wanting to talk about something that he loves the same. So we chatted for a little bit and exchanged numbers then. And we just, kept in touch and started to become better and better friends. And it turns out that we have the love for the same bad horror movies, and music, and just our personalities just really completely gelled. So, I started working with Fozzy as that started up, and, did different things because that was fun for me. And just our friendship has just been like that through the years. So we've just been good friends with a lot of common interests. And being that he's still here in the Tampa area, I see him. That's why when I told him what was going on, he's like, I can't believe this, because in the 20 years of our friendship, I don't know if the conversation about Siren was anything more than, yeah, that used to be my band, back in the day. I played drums. It was cool. We did a couple things. Zoop, and that was it for 20 years. So that's why it was so unbelievable to him to hear that we've got this chance, and why he recognized right away that this is not, something that happens every day.
All right. And my last question is, I am jealous of your collection, bro. You have that
Oh,
Ash,
which one?
your horror collection.
Yeah, man.
Dude,
You,
I've rewound this on, because I was watching on my phone. I rewound and it was
mhm.
just looking at everything you have that's horror. And I'm like, dude, this is amazing. That
Yeah, I
Ash
love me
in
some
your
horror
when going
movies.
up the
Yeah.
stairs, you have Ash right
Yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah.
That's my favorite of your collection. What
Oh,
else do you
thanks,
have in
man.
your
That's
collection that I
that's
didn't see?
Yeah, well, that's definitely a centerpiece. And it's funny because that piece has a tie into Jericho as well. And also, I mean, I'm sure you saw that I love pinball. I have my
Yeah.
Nightmare on Elm Street, and Kiss, and it's like, okay, that sums it up on that front. But the Ash figure, okay, so as I mentioned, being friends with Chris and doing some things with Fozzy along the way, I've always had kind of an open ticket door whenever I'd want to join them somewhere, just as like a rock and roll vacation for me. They'd be out touring, and I'd be like, okay, let me hop onto the tour and spend 5 days with the band, and then I'll hop off. So it's kind of like I said, like a rock and roll vacation. So I think it was in 2005. We were in England, and I had joined them for some dates in England, and we were traveling, and Chris and I were walking through a small town, and we're both huge Evil Dead fans, right? We're walking through this small English town. We look across the street, and in a store window is this life-size figure of Ash from Army of Darkness, holding the rifle, up in the air, the chainsaw. And we're like, oh my God, what is this? We go across the street, go into this little shop. I think it might have been a video shop, but we go in and we're like, what is this? Where did you get this? And they're like, oh, we don't know. you know, but you know, it's the onus. Don't touch it. We're like, okay. So we looked at it and it was like, okay, this is incredible. Never seen anything like this. So probably maybe 2 years later, I just happened to be searching like eBay and stuff. I'm like, Ash, you know, Army of Darkness statue, because that thing was a statue. It's not a figure, you know.
Oh yeah.
And I it's not the first time I did it, but I'd done it and I was like, I saw one of these things come up. I'm like, oh my God, this is exactly what I saw in England. So, and it was a guy in South Florida down in Miami area. So I bid on it, you know, once it came time, and I got it. So I drove down to pick it up, and it turns out that this guy who had it was a promoter of horror conventions. And so he would run these horror conventions and have people like Bruce Campbell, you know, come in, and all these other people. And he would do these conventions, and he had purchased this Ash statue from someone, I think in Germany, and had it flown over, and he would have it at his shows so that people could take pictures with it and this and that. And it turns out it was one of only like 6 that were made for the promotion of Army of Darkness in Europe when it came out. So that was just like, it was amazing that I was able to get my hands on the one that had found its way, you know, over to the United States. And yeah, as you saw, now it sits here. It's funny, speaking of Jericho too, I just bought a custom, I don't know if you've ever heard of this movie. It's from the 70s. It's called Phantom of the Paradise. It's like a rock and roll take on Phantom of the Opera and Faust. And it was a cheesy horror movie back then, but I saw it when I was like 11 and it just blew my mind. And I've always loved it. And so I bought this figure, and Chris has seen the movie and he's like, you know, that's, you know, I don't see what you get. But what's funny is his hometown of Winnipeg is like the unofficial home of this movie, because it stayed in the theater for like 5 years or something in Winnipeg, because they just love it, this whole city. So I give him a hard time, you know, about that fact. But yeah, man, I've been to several of those horror conventions that we mentioned and got to meet a lot of my horror heroes, you know, Angus Scrim, and just, you know, just all kinds of people, you know, Romero, Savini. I actually have that figure that you saw. Yeah, the chainsaw blade is now signed by the entire cast of Evil Dead, as well as Greg Nicotero and some other people who worked on the, you know, effects, because I'm just a nerd like that, you know, between computers, music, and movies. That, you know, I'm sure you picked up on that.
Yeah. I mean, I've done the same thing, you know, me and my Kane Hodder, he became good friends with us. And then Tom Savini.
Very cool. He's a nice guy. Legend. Straight legend. I when I was younger, I wanted to be in special effects and started to go that way, and made some of my own Super 8 movies back in the day with blood and, you know, people getting axes in the heads. But I was just right on the cusp where video equipment started to become available, but it was still too expensive. So by the time it was like 85 before I got my first video camera, and I was like, I'm already in college.
I'm an adult now.
It's going down this road now. So, but yeah, I used to love, I still have hundreds of old Fangoria magazines, you know, where I would just pour through them and seeing what guys like Savini, you know, were doing, or Rob Bottin, and, you know, those kind of guys.
I still go through them to this day and try to rip off ideas from there to put in my magazine, like just concept, not really verbatim. But then my last question, promise is the last one. What is Siren doing now?
I got nothing. We actually so that show took place in Germany, the Keep It True Festival, in 2018. And we had a blast. And by that time we had been back together for like 9 months, you know, and working and rehearsing. And as part of that process too, you talk about dreams coming true. Playing the festival was an amazing dream come true. I look at that as kind of like the cake and the icing on the cake, you know, that was to play that show. But then there have been so many other cherries that have been put on that cake since then. While we were preparing, independent labels reached out to us and said, hey, we hear you're back together. We want to put out an anthology package of all your early material up to your first album. And we're like, great. So they did that. It's like a triple vinyl package with a replica of our first single. And that was available at Keep It True and sold out, you know, immediately, which was incredible. And we had such a great time during that process of getting ready for the show and helping with that anthology package, because we recorded 3 new songs for that anthology package, that by the time the show was finished, we're like, you know what? We're having fun. I've got a studio. Let's do one full album. Let's do a full new album of material. And, you know, if nothing else, when this movie eventually sees the light of day, people won't just have all the old stuff to look on. You know, they can say, hey, here's what these guys are doing now. Here's what we can do. So we ended up doing that, which is, this is the album Back from the Dead. And it came out in April, and just, you know, put it out ourselves. It's on vinyl on Underground Power Records, who also put out the vinyl of the anthology package, and CD on FHM Records. And, you know, so that was our main focus. We spent 2019 recording this album, and, you know, now we're just kind of, we have no expectations. We were supposed to go back in 2020 to Germany to play another festival show, but COVID. So, you know, that didn't happen. So now we're just like, okay, whatever happens, happens. It's all been amazing. Everything has been another cherry on this cake of this experience. So we look at everything as, if this is the last thing that happened, it was amazing. And so that's where we're at now. And hopefully we would love to play more. And if we get those offers, you know, if people get us out to the show, we'll play the show. So, you know, that's where we're at right now, and just enjoying it, enjoying the ride.
Well, freaking A, dude. Cheers and congratulations. And
Thank you.
You're truly an inspiration and hope for us dads out there.
Thanks, man.
So we appreciate it.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. I really love the fact that you enjoyed the movie and that it resonated with you personally, because, you know, like I said, we just lived it. We were going to live it anyway. So I'm so glad that it was captured, because now, even when I watch back, I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot how cool that was to do this. Or it reminds me of, like, we went sightseeing, you know, while we were there in, like, Heidelberg or something. It was such an amazing, you know, such an amazing week and experience. And I love the fact that people like yourself are watching now and actually enjoying it.
Well, Ed, I appreciate you. God bless. And, you know, 2021, here you come.
Yeah. Hope. Yeah. Thank you very much, man. I really appreciate you having me on the show. I really do. If you need anything from me at all, just reach out. If you need any, you know, materials, music, logos, you know, I'm here for you.
We're going to put in our magazine. I'll send you out a magazine or a few magazines.
Oh, that'd be awesome, man.
Yeah. So this is going into
that'd be
an actual magazine. We still have those.
Oh, very cool.
But
that's awesome, man. Well, let me know if you need anything. I've got all of our stuff, photos and logos and, you know, whatever you need, just shoot me an email.
All right, man. I appreciate you. Have a good
problem,
one,
man. Thank you again. And, you know, have a great weekend.
You too, buddy. Bye-bye.
Thanks, man. Bye.